Hello, I'm Daniela, and welcome to the Slow Stitching online workshop for a crazy quilt block. This is an ongoing online workshop. It's 14 lessons, 14 videos. They'll be released Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with a new video each day. Each video builds on the previous video before it. So we'll start our block. Each video will be a different stitch or a different element added to the block. A different layer, essentially. At the end, we'll have a completed block. But throughout the video series, each video will showcase and focus on a particular stitch. I'll start the video by showing you the stitch, and then continue the video by showing you how I use it on my quilt block. So if you're not interested in creating the quilt block, or if you're on the fence or just curious, the first part of the video will show you how to make that stitch. The second part of the video will be the building of the quilt block. In today's video, which is rather long because it's the first video in the series, I'm going to talk about the materials we use, select my fabric, and then create that quilt block out of fabric. In the next video, we'll add trim, and then we'll start our stitches. It's a really fun workshop. I enjoy it tremendously because I'm designing the block as I go. This is a long-term project, and that's why I created so many videos. I tried to break it down into steps. You can pick and choose the stitches that you want, or delve into them further. It's really up to you. But let's get started right away.
So to get started, I always go to my specialty fabrics. These are like upholstery fabrics. Now I don't purchase these. These are remnants, fabric scraps that I've saved, things I've purchased at secondhand stores or yard sales, that type of thing. And the fabric is really elegant and beautiful. This one looks like it's a tapestry and so on. And I've kind of grouped them according to color scheme and family. And there's some overlap. Now traditional crazy quilting does not require the fabrics to match. It's totally okay if they clash. But for the purposes of this workshop, I want to create a block that looks a little more put together. So these three fabrics kind of coordinate, then there's overlap, these 3 or 4 coordinate, then these final 4. Now it's kind of interesting with choosing upholstery fabric. Some of it is so heavy and it's very difficult to hand stitch through. So I tend to avoid those fabrics unless I totally love them. This one is a gorgeous textured fabric, but it's very difficult. It's difficult to cut and it's difficult to sew through. It looks like beach waves and I just love it. And I'm sure I'll have a use for it, but I know if I'm going to use it, it's a little bit precarious. Now this is a beautiful upholstery fabric, again a little tapestry, and it's beautiful both sides, front and back. On this remnant, I saved the edge because I think I'm going to use that. It's gorgeous. This is a piece of velvet, so it's a little bit stiff to sew through, but not terrible. And then I have this gorgeous satin. So each of these pose their little challenges, and that's okay. What I want to do then, after I choose the fabrics that I want to work with, or at least the color scheme, is then I'm going to supplement it with the cotton fabric scraps that I have. But if I'm choosing these fabrics here, as you see them, I kind of group them together. Then I look for the next supply that I'm going to need, and that's going to be my trim and accents. Now you can use lace beautifully. So I have some lace here, and it goes very nicely with some of the fabric schemes. I can use it actually in a lot of them. Same thing goes with like a string of pearls here. This would go nicely with almost any of these fabrics. I also have some white lace, so I probably wouldn't use it with the off-white colors, but if I used it maybe in these, I could pick up on the white. So again, I'm just a little discerning with my supplies. The same thing goes for trim and rickrack. These look beautiful with these purpley colors, so I'll probably use those there. This gold one is gorgeous with these colors, and this blue and gold, well, probably over there with the blue and gold. I also have some pre-made patches. They're quite lovely. That one I'd use with that color scheme, and I play around with it. The blue flowers there, and this one probably over here as well. Again, I'm sure I have more things that I might dive into when I finally determine what color scheme I want to use. Now another element that I like to add to my crazy quilting are just little beautiful buttons that kind of coordinate. So these little goldenrod buttons would look lovely there, and these purple ones would look nice with the purple, and then the blue would look great with the blue. They're all very interesting. They're either very small or they have an interesting shape that I want to really focus. And then there's lace. You can get that in different colors to coordinate with your color scheme. So I think now my next challenge for me is going to be to narrow down my color choices. Right now I have 3 going on: this gold and rust, these blues, and these purples. So from here I'm going to choose one color grouping and run with it. And I think I'm going to go with the purple. So now that I've narrowed down my color choices here, I'm really basing it off of this beautiful fabric, and I'm picking it up with this dark purple, almost an eggplant color, little velvet, and this satin. I've got some trim here to choose from. I set those beads aside for my work because I love the contrast, those little shiny beads along with this rustic fabric. I went through my regular cotton fabric stash, and I got some scraps of white because that contrast is lovely and it pulls some of the white from the lace tidbits that I found. Found this beautiful purple piece of fabric. It's got a little bit of blue in it, and I just love the way that looks together. So that's another element. And then I found this dark blue fabric. So this is 6 pieces of fabric. I can add more if I want. I can repeat fabrics. Either way, it'll work out really well. I can always throw in some more fabrics. But so far I'm really enjoying this color family. I found some embroidery floss that I thought I'd use. Now I don't have a lot of purple here by choice because I want there to be contrast with my work. Originally I went and I tried to choose some colors opposite on the color wheel, some oranges and yellows, but it didn't really look right since this is so muted. So I have one strand of purple. I'll include the numbers of the floss in the show description. But then I have some beautiful greens, some of that dark blue, some of that lighter blue that coordinates with here as well as here. An additional blue, additional green, and I've got some of this pretty pinkish coral that kind of looks like the roses. I may use that, I may not, but I have all my supplies together. Lastly, I went back and I looked for just some other tidbits to add that I might want to add. I have some more lace and some thinner lace. I found this little piece of trim. It's got all these flowers on it in this top piece. I can remove that and use it individually or use it as a whole. And then I found this rope wrapped twine. I have a video on that and I'll link that in the description as well, but that will coordinate nicely. So now that I have my stash, I'm going to set these aside because this is a long-term project. So I'll put these in a basket and then I can start my project and access them as needed. I just have some quilting thread because that's what I'm going to use to tack down my fabrics to my base. So this is the way I'm going to get started. I'm going to put everything away except for my fabrics, my scissors, some pins, and my quilting thread. So now I set all my extras into this little basket, and I'll set this aside because I'm not going to need these things for a while. First thing I need to do is create the background for the piece and then start cutting up my fabrics to create that block. Now to do that, I'm going to take a just piece of muslin. That's going to be my background. It's just a plain piece of fabric. Use any piece you like. This one is probably 10 inches by 14 inches. And I have a piece of iron-on, just fusible, interfacing, single-sided. I purchased it in a package by a few yards at a time. This is 2 yards. And the whole purpose of this is to just add a little bit of stiffness and body to my muslin because it's very thin. Now the interfacing has one side with adhesive on it, and if you feel it, it's rough. You can barely see those pieces in the camera, the little bumps. And then it has the other side that's completely smooth. So I want to get the adhesive onto the backing of my muslin. Now I do that by taking out my ironing board, setting my fusible interfacing down with the adhesive up, and then I just put it over my fabric. My block is only going to be about 6 or 8 inches. in size, in diameter, but I do want to reinforce the backing, and then I'm going to tuck the ends when I'm all done. I'm going to turn this into either a cushion center or a wall hanging. So I need to have extra fabric. You can make this any size you want, and that's the beauty of this project, is it's perfect for any size. By making the block 6 or 8 inches square, roughly, that's the size, I'm not going to make it into a square, I get a lot of variation in my piece and a lot of leeway for using the extra fabric to fold over and make a nice neat edge. So right now I'm just going to continue to press all around to adhere this interfacing to this muslin. So now I ironed on the back as well as the front, and my piece is now one. So it has a lot more body. As you can see, it's very stiff. Even when I hold it, it doesn't flop over. I printed out a hexagon template. Now this one is 8 inches wide. It's 7 inches tall, but the important thing to note is that each of the sides are 4 inches. And I'll include a link where you can download the template and print it out if you want, or you can just sketch one. It doesn't even have to be perfect. So from here, I'm just taking a Frixian marker. This is one that will disappear with heat, but it's going to be covered up. And I'm just going over and tracing the perimeter here. Now, of course, you could size this up or down, however you like. This template, I traced it onto a piece of cardstock just because it's a little stronger there. So there's the hexagon I'm going to use for my crazy quilt block here. So now is the part that takes the longest and is a little frustrating. I want to put at least 6, but as many as I want, really. I'd say 6 to 8 is your key here. Different pieces of fabric. So I have my fabrics that I chose that I wanted to work with. So I'm going to start with this one because this is the one I really like. And because I want to keep that edge, I'm going to just kind of eyeball it. I think I'm going to make it go across the bottom here. So it'll be about from here to here, or I can do any type of angle that I want. I'm going to flip it over, and then just with a little piece of chalk, this is a chalk pencil, I'm going to sketch it out so that I can cut it out. And I'm going to use the base of this tassel as my line. So here's where I'm cutting it out. And now I just want to combine that. I can even make this go a little further. And just cut it across. So now I'll trim this up. And I have one of my pieces for my hexagon. This is the part you want to take your time with and really create the shape you want using the fabric pieces that you have. Now again, this fabric could fray. You have some options there. So you can let it fray. You can use a fusible backing, ironing it on your piece and then ironing it down, and that stops some of the fraying. You could stitch over the edge right away. We'll stitch over the edge as we sew. Or you can use some fray check, which is a little bottle of glue that will hold the edge. So I'm going to just keep that there. I'll pin it down, but I'm going to probably move it again. So I'll just pin that in place. So now I just want to play with the remaining fabrics that I have, trying to see which ones I want and where I want them. The other ones, though, I'm going to really play with the edge. Some of them I might fold over and make a folded edge, and others I'll keep flat. The velvet is very hard to work with, so I'm not going to fold this one over. But now I'm going to just choose another area to make my next piece, and my next piece will be the velvet. So again, I know I want it to go from here to here somewhere, and again it's just eyeballing it and feeling the best place for it. So I'll flip this over. Again, I'm using my white chalk because that's where I need it to go. I think I'm going to have this piece go from maybe here to here, or even more of an angle. I'll just dot that along. Take my piece of fabric and cut it along that line that I created. I know that I can't flip the piece over because I want to get the exact shape, the right angle for the job here. and I'm just playing around with this. Now there are templates online that you can download to make your own crazy quilt. It's a pattern, and you can just trace your pattern to your fabrics. I prefer just creating the pattern as I go. It is time consuming, but I like the results. They're very personal. So that's 2. And now I need at least 4 more pieces of fabric. I think for the center fabric, I'll use some white here. So roughly, I'll use that as the center fabric. Now what I think I'll do for this piece is cut all around this piece and tack all my other fabrics to it. So that goes from there all the way to here, go over a little more. And because we're going to be embellishing this, it doesn't have to be a perfect shape. We'll be covering the edges, but here I can just play around with it by attaching this, tucking it under this piece. And now I want a little piece here. It's this little piece that I traced. Choose another fabric for that. I think I'll choose the blue for that. So again, I'm just eyeballing this. Not the most precise method. And we'll see how this comes out. Again, I could tuck this underneath. Great, so I have 4 pieces so far. Now I want to add 2 more pieces to here and here. I'm going to come here on this piece of satin. I'll cut 1 piece here. Making it much larger than I need, and then I'll trim it as I go. So that's coming along like that. And again, just continue to see where this goes. Now I've got the little edge exposed here. That's okay. I'm going to hide that with trim. Or I can just hide that with another piece of fabric, which is what I'll do. So now I have 5 pieces of fabric. I want 1 more piece, so I think I'm going to come with this beautiful piece of fabric. Decide how I want it. I might trim this down further. It's a very big piece. And now since I want it at the edge here, I'll just use that edge as my guide. I think I'll trim this straight across. And then I'll just tuck this one under. So now I have the basis of my block. I'm going to pin each one of these in place. And this is the last of the video for today. My homework assignment for this one is I'm going to take quilting thread, and if I don't have quilting thread in similar colors, dark or light, I'll just take 1 strand of embroidery floss, and I'm just going to lightly tack down the perimeter of these shapes. Now where there's overlap, I don't have to tack repeatedly, but I can depending on the appearance. I'm going to play with these seams eventually with embroidery and trim, so I'm just going to stitch enough to tack it down on the perimeter of each of these shapes. So then I'll use darker colors for the darker pieces and lighter colors for the lighter pieces.
So that's how I get started creating a quilt block. It can be a little overwhelming at first. You're starting with just beautiful pieces of fabric, and now we want to fine-tune it and create our design. Trust me, once you create that design, the rest of it's easy from here. It's now about creating different stitches and different fun elements that we want to add to our piece. You can use any elements from previous videos or any elements that you enjoy making. The Previous videos that I've made might show you some ideas that you want to incorporate into your quilt block. And if there's a favorite, I encourage you to add it in. I'll show you all the steps of the way as I go, creating my quilt block. And then for paid members, I have behind the scenes footage where I'm creating a parallel block just for members only. I'll include the link below in case you want to join. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. And thank you for joining me today.